It's 8:36 in the morning on this, the 11th day of September in the year of our Lord Steve the Cat, 2023. It is about 71 degrees and, well, actually it's thunderstorm weather here, but I don't think we're actually going to get a thunderstorm. Yeah, 70 degrees and 70% humidity. Beach towns. It's Monday, which means on Monday, it is time once again to take a deep breath, pull out our compass, roll out our maps, get our sextant, I said sex, pointed at the stars, and plot our course for the week. That's right, it's time to take a look at all the tabletop role-playing game news stories that are going to affect the tabletop role-playing game industry for the rest of the week and what we're going to be all angry about. And it should come as no surprise that the two main stories come from Wizards of the Coast. Because, God forbid, they leave well enough alone for even a second. Now, first, some good news. Chris Perkins has returned as the main DM for Acquisitions Incorporated. They just had a PAX East broadcast of Acquisitions Incorporated Campaign 2. And Mike is back playing Jim Dark Magic. Now we know Mike left because of reasons. We're not sure what those reasons are, but he's back playing Jim Dark Magic, and we're very excited to see Jim Dark Magic return as the cornerstone of Acquisitions Incorporated. Yeah. And Chris Perkins running Greyhawk in Acquisitions Incorporated. Yeah. And running the Minds of Fandelver sequel thingy, Shattered Obelisk. Yeah. Which leads us to the next two stories. Because, yes. So story number one from Wizards of the Coast is Unearthed Arcana playtest number 7 has hit the D&D Beyond site. It's available for free if you want to look at it. Don't expect a lot of major changes because the major change seems to be they went backwards. They went backwards to 2014 D&D. And at this point, if we're going by playtest number 7, 2024 D&D 5.3 looks more like just a 20-page errata than an actual new revised look at the rules, which would go back to their original statement that we're not making a brand new rule set. We're just tidying things up, which would then, of course, go back to my original statement. Then why make this? Why charge us $55 to $155 for 1 to 3 books that we don't need? But then as we went into playtest number 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, things drastically changed. And on more than one occasion, we were pretty much led to believe this is going to be a brand new version of the game, that there will be so many changes from 2014 to 2024 D&D that you would have to buy the books to remain competitive because based upon the playtest, the post-2024 D&D builds would outpower the pre-2024 D&D builds, even with Tasha's and Xanthers, 1,000-fold. There's no way a first-level 2014 fighter could go toe-to-toe with a playtest 2024 fighter. Well, don't worry about that, because now it appears that they're going backwards. Everything that they've said they're trying to change over the past year is being tossed aside in typical Wizards of the Coast logic. As far as you know, that past year never actually happened, and this is always what they intended. What is funny is as they were having the live stream and as they had Jeremy Crawford and Todd Kendrick gushing over each other, giving us this information about how it is no longer a new book or even an expansion, it's basically a 20-page errata, they were receiving negative comments about the changes, about why is this necessary? At this point, it's just an errata. I'm not going to give you that much money. Why did you waste our time? Oh, I kind of like that change. Most of these changes don't feel like changes. How is this different than Tasha's? Now you might be thinking, well, those complaints all came from your side of the fence, OGGM. They all came from the old school, the people that hate D&D. But no, the main complaints about the playtest are coming from the actual 5e players, proving once again that Wizards of the Coast does not really actually understand their players because they think their target audience is a completely different group than the people who are actually their target audience. They continue to marginalize Dungeons and Dragons for a very specific small subclass of the player base, most of whom either never existed in the first place, or don't count, because the ones that you're trying to appease to are not people who actually actively play. If you look at the complaints and the comments on playtest number 7, those are all coming from people who are actually playing 5th edition and what they actually wanted, which begs the point, why do I need to spend $55 to $155 for this book if it's just an errata? And it looks like to be about maybe 20 pages of errata. Now, if you don't know what an errata is, because you're going to hear me say that a lot, and you're probably throughout the week, and as we continue to address this story, there might be some places out there that are like, I don't know what an errata is. What is an errata? So errata is something that's usually released after something is done. I'll use Villains and Vigilantes because it's the first one that popped in mind. When the 2nd edition Villains and Vigilante box set came out, it had already gone to print, and then they realized there was a mathematical mistake in one of the formulas. So rather than making you buy a completely new book, they just printed out a little thing with the correct math on it and then slid it in the box. It took them, 20 minutes to change it, to print it out, and maybe a day or two to slide them into all the boxes. And every time they then reprinted the box, that errata was put into it, and that contained this stuff, the correct math formula, and a few other things that they missed, like, oh, actually, this is on page 23, not page 21, even though we say it's on page 21. So that's basically what an errata is. Errata is oops, we made some mistakes. It's too late to change it. We're not going to charge you for a brand new book. Here's a piece of paper that has the changes on it. Okay? That is what an errata is. And based upon the current playtest, we're looking at maybe 20 actual pages, not counting art, not counting fluff, of errata. Things that we're like, oh, okay, this is what we meant to say. Oh, after 7 playtests, we found that this math works better. But basically, 2024 fighter and 2024 fighter are now pretty much the same. So we don't need to charge you $155 for basically 20 pages. We could just either A, make it free, which would be a great way to earn some goodwill. B, charge you what it's worth, $10, especially since it's going to be digital on D&D Beyond. Or 3, we could be Wizards of the Coast and charge you $55 to $155 for a book you don't apparently need anymore. So that's where things stand in Unearthed Arcana Playtest 7. Now, let us not forget that we can expect at least 1, if not 2 more playtests between now and January. They've already said we're going to expect at least 1 more, because they didn't do all the classes. There's still a whole nother chunk of classes that need to be addressed in playtest number 8. And they've already also said, as usual, they're not getting the responses they thought they would get. Now, one thing you should think about as we toss all these pointless facts out there is if they're still playtesting it at almost, the 2nd week, going into the 3rd week of September, that means the actual product hasn't been finished yet. And we still haven't seen anything for playtests for the DM's Guide or the Monster Manual, if there is going to be one. Which means, as of today, playtest 7, almost a year in, they still don't really have a finished product ready to go January. Also, and of course, you can ignore pretty much everything in this playtest because they've got at least 1, if not more, coming down the pike before January. So they can still change more things. But again, Wizards of the Coast, why should I give you anywhere from $55 to $155 for a book that I don't need? Would it be more cost effective to just release the 20-page errata for, I don't know, if you have to charge people money for it, $10, since it's going to be digital on D&D Beyond anyways? I don't know, just... But speaking of Wizards of the Coast, that's not the only trouble they're in. You know what else is generating some Wizards of the Coast heat? Well, that would be Fendelver. Phandelver and Beyond Shattered Obelisk, the pre-released has been available. People are commenting on it. And you know what people are commenting about? The body hoarder. The body horror. The fact that there are tentacle monsters in this book. So here we go. Let's look at some of the art in Phandelver and Beyond. People, I was actually kind of excited about this one, but now, sorry. So this is the cover. This is the alternate art cover. The main cover, of course, features Tentacle Cow. Now, without knowing anything about this product, what is the first thing you see on this cover? What is your eye instantly drawn to? Why, it's cosmic horror, Lovecraftian nightmare creatures, slime and tentacles all over the place. This is a tentacle hentai dream. This book is all about horror, body horror, cosmic horror, and tentacles. Okay? And it is supposed to, I guess, explain the obelisks that have been haunting Dungeons and Dragons since 2014 and rumored to finally explain said obelisk and introduce the individual who's been the main bad guy for every official D&D product since 2014. Our boy Vecna. At least that's what they hinted at, and that's what we wanted, and that's what we expected. Whether that's actually what happens in the book or not, I don't know, because the only thing people are talking about are the tentacles and the safety tools. First off, there are people who are surprised that there were safety tools in this book. It's a book about tentacle horror. If anything is going to have safety tools in it from Wizards of the Coast, it's going to be this. Anybody who's surprised that it has tentacle horror in it, I don't know what to tell you. It's literally a tentacle horror adventure. It's going to feature slimes, tentacles. Okay, so there are safety tools, and I said there would be safety tools. I would have been surprised if there weren't any safety tools. They rolled out a semi-attractive young woman who I guess had something to do with the creation of this book in the interview about this book to talk about the mind flayers and the horror and the tentacles and the body horror. Okay, so the fact that there are safety tools in this book should not surprise anyone. We've already agreed that this is what we can expect from here forward, that it is something that's going to exist in Dungeons and Dragons now. It's just the way things are. Just accept it and move on. Whether you choose to use the safety tools or not, that's up to you. So, of course, there were people who are upset because how dare they put safety tools in this book. Well, I'm sorry, that should not have come as a surprise to anyone. Then there are people who are upset about where they put the safety tools, because the safety tools apparently are not at the beginning, as they usually are. They're hidden throughout the actual book. And one of those safety tools involves people getting polymorphed against their will into tentacle monsters / mind flayers / something. So the warning is before the introduction of this mechanic. And they're saying, before you do this, make sure your players are okay with it. And that is what started a lot of controversy on both sides. People are upset that it had safety tools. People are upset about where the safety tools are. People are upset about what the safety tools are. It's just weird. Ooh, octopus, right? There he is. There's a boy. There's Cthulhu. All right. Now, this started the whole, how dare you polymorph my character without my permission thing. Now, anybody who's played any role-playing game but longer than 10 minutes know there's going to be 9 out of 10 people who would gladly be polymorphed into a mind flayer if they thought it would get them extra power. You know that, and I know that, and anybody who says otherwise is lying. How many times throughout the history of this hobby have we seen people draw from the deck of many things, multi-drink potions, refuse to take a saving throw versus being turned into a werewolf or whatever else, or getting what was it called? An astral symbiote, or any of the other things that should be bad. Oh no, my character's half vampire now? darn, that's horrible. I gain a 3 extra hit dice and an extra attack. Oh, wow, that sucks. Oh, no, my character is half dragon now? Oh, wow, how dare you polymorph me? Now I have a breath weapon and bonus armor class and I can fly. Wow, that really sucks. Oh, no, my character got polymorphed into a mind flayer against my will? Oh, that violates all my safety tools. But wait, how many extra attacks do I get? Oh, and I get psychic ability. Well, I mean, yeah, that's really horrible. So first, the fact that people are complaining about this is, we know D&D players, and we know there are at least 5 out of every 10 who would be like, yeah, fuck yeah, turn me into a tentacle beast. I want the extra attacks. But there are people who like, I don't want my characters to be changed without my permission. It violates my safety tools because I don't like body horror. You know this can't happen to you in real life, right? Now, I don't know what mixed up life you have led that the fear of being turned into a slime beast is something that actually upsets you. But then why are you playing in an adventure where it clearly states in every piece of art for said adventure that you are going to deal with body horror and being forcibly turned into something else? And the other argument is it's now I need your consent as a DM before I polymorph you. Well, that leads to now I need your consent as a DM before I do anything to your character. I can't hold person your character. I can't polymorph your character. I can't, cast grease on your character. I can't do anything that would change or hinder or alter your character because it might trigger some deep fear you have of being held or bound or transformed against your will. Now, I understand that there might be people out there who do have fears of being bound, tied up, and might be even people out there that having their player character transform from the half-elf, half-carrot that they've been playing for 6 levels into a half-elf, half-character who now has tentacles and gets 2 extra attacks and psychics or whatever, might trigger some fear. But this should be discussed before the game starts. You should be presented with the adventure. You should be able to know that if you're playing through Fendelver and beyond, you're going to be dealing with tentacle horror and that there's a possibility that tentacle horror will happen to you. Also, did you not read the player's handbook? Did you not see the possible things that you could happen or that could happen to you? I mean, I'm sure if the shoe was the other foot and you did something to my NPCs, you'd be perfectly fine with that, right? Oh, I cast Hold Person on the orc. Well, okay. That's a spell your character has. That doesn't seem to trigger your fear of Hold Person. It's only when I cast Hold Person on you that you're upset. I cast Polymorph on that dragon to turn it into a chicken, something I did hundreds of times when I was using a polymorpher. Oh, that's okay if I do this to the bad guys. But if the bad guys do it to me, it triggers my fear. That is the big complaint, and that is what is generating all the trouble. If DMs can't have safety tools, why do players? Now, we know that I've said before, I still have PTS from the 2018 Thomas Fires, okay? So theoretically, I could say, jokingly, I don't want you using fire in my game, players, because it triggers my memories. Now, that is ridiculous, of course, right? It's not real fire. I'm not going to have a panic attack if somebody burns down my village. I'm just going to be upset that they're killing my villagers. But these are the things that people are afraid of happening, and that's why safety tools are a concern and an argument that we're still happening. Not that, the game might place you in a mental and emotional situation where you're not able to comprehend it for one moment. That could happen in anything. That is why you get up, take a break. You either choose to come back or not come back. And afterwards, you discuss the situation with the DM and the other players in a safe situation where you won't be lambasted and vilified for taking a break. And the DM won't feel like, oh, I'm going to be lambasted and vilified because I placed this in my game. Because every example so far basically vilifies the DM for choosing not to use these. So that is the Wizards of the Coast news. Now, is there anything coming on with that doesn't involve Wizards of the Coast in the news? Let's find out, because there's got to be something, right? Other than the fact it's 9/11. All right. So besides the playtest being over, besides the polymorph nonsense, we have yet another new chunk of information from Pathfinder, or their most latest, I guess, tail end of Pathfinder 2nd Edition before they do their soft restart with Pathfinder 2nd Edition Core 2 Remastered Electric Boogaloo with bacon and cheese on the side. Then this is the dwarf-centric High Helm. High Helm, they've been pushing High Helm for a while now, which is an interesting choice to be the final adventure path / storyline before they do the soft reset with Pathfinder Remastered. So, I'm not sure why, but yeah. Other game companies, we've got the Level Up Advanced Starter box from EN Publishing. If you are curious about the Level Up 5e role-playing game, the first 5e retro clone that I'm aware of, this came out around the same time Tasha's did. It has been the most consistent of all the retro clones. And yeah, it's interesting that they are also one of the few companies that did not involve themselves in the January manic panic over the OGO. They just kept making product. The creators of Capers have a new Kickstarter starting. This is called Capers Cyberpunk. It takes the idea of superpowered gangsters and superpowered criminals into the world of cyberpunk, making the Capers system more of now a sort of generic system about superheroes than just a regular system. Though it is not superhero-centric, the creators of Capers has always made it clear that it is genre-centric first, supers second. The very first being Capers, which was about an alternative 1920s, 1930s Prohibition-era gangster, just happened to have superheroes and supervillains. There is a huge Dungeon Crawl Classic Mega Bundle on Humble Bundle right now. If you want a chance to pick up some DCC stuff, this would be a good time. And of course, we have the playtest packet and the other stuff. Dreams of Machines from Modiphius is available now. They've been talking about this. This is, as far as I know, the first original setting for D20 from Modiphius. It is sort of a hopeful post-apocalypse of man versus machine with hope as opposed to terror. And pre-orders of that are being set now. And that's it for the news. It is sad that the main story, once again, is Wizards of the Coast continuing to pander to a non-existent audience, and pointless arguments over safety tools continuing to be used. And basically the argument breaks down to, if you don't use safety tools, you're a horrible human being. Or if you do use safety tools, there's something wrong with you. Now, the horrible human being crowd claims that the people who are using safety tools at their games are mentally defective, they're immature, they're children, don't they understand it's a game, nothing bad can happen with you. You know what, we played this game fine for 50 years all over the world, millions of us, and it's been relatively okay. We never needed tools because we were all understood it. And the fact that you do need tools means there's something wrong with you, blah, blah, blah. So that is the main argument for the against. And the pro safety tools argument basically breaks down to, well, if you don't use them, you're a horrible person. All the people gaming before we did are horrible people. There's people who claiming, oh, you know what, I've been using safety tools for 4 decades now, and the fact you haven't makes you a horrible person. And everybody else is like, you're 12 years old. How have you been using them for 4 decades? Give me an example. And every time you try and have a debate, 9 out of 10 of the pro safety tools basically revert back to the, how could you not use these? How could you not have respect for people at your table? You're a horrible person. What if something happens that triggers somebody being upset and they get upset? Do you just instantly vilify them? And the response is no. I'm more concerned about being vilified as the DM because I didn't follow the 110 choices I have to supposedly do to make people feel comfortable. I'm constantly, as a DM now, walking on eggshells, worrying that I might do something that might trigger somebody, either realistically trigger them, or they might use the trigger mechanics, the X card mechanics, as a way to sabotage the game. That is the fear from the anti-safety tools crowd. And that fear is constantly made more pallid by the fact that the pro-safety tools crowd's main argument seems to be that if you don't use them, you're a horrible person and you have no respect for your players. And anybody who gamed before 2014 is basically just the worst possible baby-eating, zombie-loving, baby kitten-kicking human being that there is. And you shouldn't be playing. And this latest thing about tentacle horror, of course, has regurgitated this argument that people like me are awful human beings for not using safety tools. And in return, the awful human beings are just like, look, we just talk about it before the game, okay? If I'm running Fendelver, you should know there's going to be tentacle horror in it. We talked about it before the game. We had a session 0. You were on board with tentacle horror. And now you're like, oh, wait, please, no, you can't change my character because I suddenly remembered I'm afraid of octopuses. Now, yes, I'm making light of the subject, and I've been told off very sternly on in the Twitterverse recently for engaging in this argument. And, you know, look, I understand the counterpoint of view. I also accept the fact that whether I like it or not, safety tools are a thing, and it's going to be something we're going to be talking about ad nauseum until the day I'm dead. But again, I just like, you know what? For 50 years, we've been playing this game all over the world and in space. Millions of people, millions of different versions of this game, hundreds of other games besides D&D. Some of those games dealing with topics that are so outlandishly awful that it makes Dungeons and Dragons tentacle horror look like a episode of Hello Kitty. And we were fine for 50 years. I mean, sure, and I can't speak for individuals, and some of these situations might happen, but, you know, the game was always supposed to be safe for people like us. It was the place where people like me could go to feel safe. But now we're being told we weren't safe. For 50 years, we've been doing it wrong. And now these new group of people are like, oh, no, this is the way you have to do it because these people have issues. Well, you know, yeah, that's not my fault. And, you know, if you forgot you were afraid of spiders, which is a horrible example, but it is the example that keeps getting shoved down our throat. And I don't know of any situation where safety tools have actually been used to make things better. But I could be wrong. And I know the story's not going to go away. But it does seem to be the main topic of the news. And I don't know why Wizards of the Coast handled things the way they did with this book. I mean, you knew they were going to do face safety tools. Come on. So why not just put them where you'd normally do, either in the front or the back, instead of just sort of peppering them throughout as DM notes. And then, of course, you pick your scapegoat, which, you know, is a whole other topic, while Wizards of the Coast seems to be using young, pretty girls as their new scapegoats. I guess they figure people won't attack them as much if we bring out a young, pretty girl. We know Gini Darling, and then we know Mackenzie, and now we have this new one. I don't remember her name, but she's the newest, latest pretty girl that's being put out in the face of the world as the, oh, here's one of the creators for Strixhaven. Oh, yeah, Mind Flayer, tentacle horrors, yeah. But the second things turn against them and Wizards of the Coast are like, oh, we're so sorry we did this. You know they're going to turn on her just like this, just like they did on Mackenzie, and just like they did on Ginny Darling, and just like they did on Ginny D. So, yeah, Wizards of the Coast, inclusiveness, diversity, women's rights, yeah. We have some comments. Wow, I hardly ever get comments. Let's see. Oh, it's just, yeah, errata sheets, you know, yeah. Blah. Have they considered a survey on game designing as they clearly need help? No, they have not. First off, announce the setting so people would be interested in it. Yes, what setting is 5E.3 2024 going to be set in? Is it the Realms? Is it Planescape? Is it something else? Most of the Fendelvers reprint enough with the Sword Coast. Yeah, well, I mean, the first half is a reprint update of the original adventure. I'm just curious about the actual story. You know, does it actually end the story of the obelisk and explain the obelisk? Blah. Go play. You know, people are complaining. It's funny that people will complain about being turned into a mind flayer against their will, but nobody's complaining about being turned into a bear and having sex with that guy against their will. Bear sex, okay. Mind flayer's bad. If you have to work for the government, the fear of being turned into a slimy tentacle beast is legit and real. Shh, you're not supposed to know about those experiments they've been conducting on you, sir. Travel, wasn't Radiant Citadel supposed to be traveled to many settings? Yes, Radiant Citadel was basically Babylon 5, DS9, Stargate, while Spelljammer is Star Trek, Star Wars, whatever. Who should then become an NPC if the DM has any sense at all? Yes, you should become an NPC werewolf when you get turned into a werewolf, but you know players would cry. So people are like, fine, you can be a player character werewolf. If you can run a horror game that I can't rationally cope with due to fear and horror, I'm in. That's what I want from a horror game. Like, that's why you watch a horror movie. No, that was Strixhaven. Here's the only safety tool you need. I don't like playing this type of game, but thanks for inviting me. Yeah, that's it. I've said that 100 times. This is what's you're going to have. This is what is going to be in this adventure. Anybody have a problem with that? Oh, you do? Okay, well, there's two things we can do here. We could, try and address that problem and make you understand that, yes, this is, if you want to play, you're going to encounter this. Or I can help you find a different game. If you don't want to play grind my players D&D, let's play Golden Sky Stories or a board game. All right, I wasted almost a half an hour on this topic when the news was supposed to be short and sweet, but yes, it is something we talked about and we're going to keep talking about to the end of fucking time. So if you appreciate this content, let me know. If you haven't subscribed yet, give me a subscribe. Help me hit 2,000 subs by the end of the year. Until then, stay safe out there and watch out for those tentacles. Tentacle bees, tentacle cow,